Hi, I'm Eddie Burke. I've been the bartender at the Hollywood Improv for 40 years, and this is my podcast, Eddie's Bar at the Improv.
All right, rolling.
Hey guys, welcome to Eddie's Bar at the Improv. Here we are again, and today I think we're going to fill you in on a little bit of my background. You might want to call this a little bit narcissistic. However, a lot of people have always asked me, how'd you get here? What brought you to the Improv? What brought you to LA? And what brought you into entertainment? So I think we're going to just fill in a little bit of that background for you and let you know where I come from, what I've done. Because believe it or not, I did have another life before this. I was a teacher. I was a dean. I was brought up in the Catskill Mountains in New York. My parents were Catskill Mountain entertainers. They worked in nightclubs in New York. My background with them is immense in the sense that I was meeting celebrities from the age of 3. People like Rodney Dangerfield, people like Jackie Mason. They may be a little bit older in terms of the demographic out there, but these are people that started comedy. And in the meantime, I've come and ended up right here where I am now, and I'm not unhappy about that. It's been a journey, and it's been fun. I've gotten to meet so many people that I probably never would have met. But right now, let me fill you in on some of the stuff, let you know where I started, what my parents did, because that's a big part of what I did. And I guess the beginning would be the Catskills.
Can you tell me what the Catskills were and are?
Oh, the Catskill Mountains was basically a Jewish resort area back in New York, and most Jewish or a lot of Jewish families would spend their summers up there, or a couple of weeks, their vacations up there in the summertime, and the entertainment was what it was all about, and of course so was the eating. It was all about eating and the entertainment, and that's where I got to meet the people that I did. That's where I guess I learned a lot about comedy without doing comedy, because I'm the last person you want to see on stage telling a joke.
Your father was a booker in the Catskills.
Yes, he was. He was a booker. He was what they called master of ceremonies, a social director. What he would do is he would hire the comedians that performed on the weekends and in their shows. Every hotel had shows every night. That was their entertainment. They would have things like what they would call hootenannies, hay rides, and then they'd have nightclub acts. And those people would come in and everybody would just have a ball. That was the life that everybody kind of wanted back then, especially if you were a Jewish family living in New York. You ended up, if you didn't go to the Catskills, you were missing out.
I got to say that I've never heard the term hootenanny in correlation with the Catskill Mountains.
Oh God, believe me, it was used. I can't even remember all of these things. We'd have like hootenannies, square dances.
Wow, this is new to me.
Hoedowns. The things that they did were crazy. They'd have like what they called Sadie Hawkins dances, where the girls would ask the boys to dance, the men would ask the women. And
did they have an inspiration point where you guys could go neck?
Well, each hotel had their own little thing. One of the hotels that we stayed at was had a little lake and it had a little island, and that island was pretty popular. All you had to do was take one of the rowboats and row out there, and you were stranded, you and whoever
the infamous
you were with.
Sex Island.
That was it.
Eddie, was there an equivalent to the West Coast for the Catskills?
I don't believe so. The Catskills were very unique. I don't think they existed anywhere else because of the fact that there was probably a large Jewish population in New York, and that's where they kind of drove an hour or 2 hours.
Was there a correlation between the Catskills and Vaudeville, or are they two separate things?
Oh, no. There was a correlation. They are separate things, but there was definitely a correlation because those entertainers that played Vaudeville also played the hotels up there.
Mm-hmm.
There was Grossingers, the Concord. These are, Raleigh, places that were very big and paid their acts a lot of money.
Would you equate the Catskills to like Branson or Las Vegas nowadays?
I would probably equate it more to Las Vegas without the gambling, and that's another interesting little aside, is the gambling for that went to Atlantic City. The Catskills were offered that first to put in gambling up there because it was already made. They had the hotels, they had the people that came all the time. They didn't have to build the hotels like Atlantic City did. However, there was one hotel owner that held out and nixed the whole thing, and unfortunately he was a hotel owner that my father worked for. It was called the Gibbers Hotel.
Now we're getting to the grit.
Yeah, it was called the Gibbers Hotel, and it was just this old guy that just said, nah, I don't want this gambling up here.
Mm-hmm.
It brings, it won't make any money. Lo and behold, 10 years later, the Catskills are pretty much dead. Atlantic City is now the place for everybody to go on their vacation. And I do believe, I haven't been in the Catskills in, 30, 40 years almost, but it's not the Catskills that I grew up in.
Are those theaters still in existence?
The nightclubs up there?
Yeah.
No, not to my knowledge. They're not.
Do you think it's because the newer generations just found other places and the other people have passed away and it's just...
It's probably a combination. What happened is all of a sudden cruises came into existence. It became just as economical to take a cruise as it did to stay up in the Catskills for 2 weeks, because it wasn't cheap, because you're paying for your food, your boarding, and usually you're taking your whole family.
Well, how long was the travel to the Catskills from New York City?
Well, when I was a kid, it seemed like it was a week. However, it was only an hour and a half to 2 hours. It was because we spent the entire summer up there.
When I was a kid, 40 seemed like you're near death. Like, my dad's 40. He's going to die any minute.
Oh, yes. Well, in that case, I would have been dead myself. Yeah. But it seemed like it was a long trip. But, of course, the cars were a little slower when I was a kid. And we always used to go up there every summer, and we'd come back right after Labor Day. But it's not the same anymore. I don't know what it's turned into, but it certainly isn't the Catskills. And like I said, it's because of the cruise ships came into being. Mm-hmm. Atlantic City came into being.
It's just got such a legendary name about it, the Catskills. And
mm-hmm.
most people really don't know what it was. That's just why I'm asking. But it's kind of incredible that you were there.
Well, it was
that now you're here.
It's a growing ground. It was a growing ground. People, like I said, Rodney Dangerfield, my father was one of the first to give him work in the Catskills. He was a good friend of my father. When I was working out here and he came in, I reintroduced myself to him. And my father's name was Irving Burke, and he went, "Oh, yeah, Irving Burke, I love him. How's he doing?" And all that. And, him and... Jackie Mason, who actually, believe it or not, had consigned the restaurant here at one point.
Here at the Improv?
Here at the Improv. He had the restaurant over there where our restaurant is now, but it was called Jackie Mason's Feed Your Face.
Wow. When was that?
God, that had to be probably the late 80s.
Holy moly, somewhere. I had no idea he even traveled to L.A.
Oh, yeah, no, he was here, and he was here every day, I
had no idea.
He did a very unique thing at that time, too. When he had his grand opening, he had this far wall painted white, and it was just filled with celebrities. And he had them all put their handprint on the wall with their signature underneath. But obviously, that's all gone. And
I wonder what happened to that wall.
It got painted over, and that was the end of it. But there was a little bit of a falling out between Jackie Mason and Bud Friedman and Mark Leno, who were the original
Bud
owners.
Friedman was the founder of the Improv.
Bud Friedman is the founder, to me, of the stand-up comedy nightclub everywhere, no matter who wants to take the credit. In 1963, I believe it was, he opened the Improv in New York. And that was the beginning of the nightclubs for stand-up comedy. Even though his club itself, he had singers,
Poets,
who knows what,
spoken word.
Everybody.
I think he just wanted to open a nightclub.
Well, he did, and he wanted to open a nightclub for people to come, for the performers to come after their shows, like Broadway shows. Yeah. There were dancers there. Bette Midler, I believe, was there. Liza Minnelli, Dustin Hoffman. I was never there, and 1963 was even a little before my time. But everybody and his mother, to my knowledge, would go there. There's probably not a celebrity that entertains that didn't show up there.
It's kind of fascinating to think that he opened this nightclub, and it eventually, throughout the course of fate, from comedians coming in and wanting to get stage time, it turned into exclusively a comedy club monster. This countrywide.
Well, most definitely. What caused that actual switchover, I don't know, but it certainly was a benefit. I do believe when he first opened this club out here, I think in 73, I believe, this was not just strictly a stand-up club. He also had a music night. The music company BMI would have a showcase every Wednesday night, and almost all of Bud's shows were opened by a singer at that time. And
we still have a piano on the stage to this day, even though it gets used maybe less than 1% of the time.
Oh, we do. It may get used less than 1%, but we've got people like Craig Robinson that comes in almost all the time and performs and uses it. Wayne Fetterman, people that they love to just sit at the piano and tell their jokes, do their things. But this club became stand-up only. Oh, God, I don't know, probably the very late 70s, just as I was starting.
Now, you came out here from New York.
I came out here in 1976. I had just spent 7 years teaching and being a dean, a behavioral counselor at a middle school in New York, in Harlem, Frederick Douglass Intermediate School 10. It was like really a highlight of my life. But after 7 years, I kind of decided I wanted to pursue my dream, which was acting. And so just one day, I just decided, I went into the main office, said, guys, I'm putting in my notice. This was like at the beginning of the school year, and let's say it was September 3rd, 4th, 5th. And by October 1st, I was out here.
You weren't married at the time?
No. I was not married at the time. I was on my own. Although when I moved out here, I moved out also partially to move in with my girlfriend at the time, who I had met out here on a trip.
God, sex drive. Eddie, when did you first feel like you wanted to get into the acting?
Oh, actually, as a kid, I attended the High School of Performing Arts for a year when, I believe it was the 10th grade. And spent only 1 year there. And the reason I left that was because I also had a big desire to play baseball. I was fairly decent, and the High School of Performing Arts did not have any sports teams. Their sports were ballet dancing and the like. I just decided I wanted to play baseball, and my local high school obviously had a baseball team, as most did. So I transferred out, plus the fact in all honesty, my grades were not the best over there.
Which position did you play?
In high school, I played left field. And in college, I played third base. I was fortunate enough to have a tryout and an invitation with the San Diego Padres, and also played both at Shea Stadium and Yankee Stadium in tryouts. Didn't make it because obviously I'm here.
What was that like being down on the field in Yankee Stadium?
It's an unbelievable feeling because you field ground balls on dirt that is so smooth. I was so used to playing in Central Park in New York, where all you have is rocks and gravel, and all you're waiting to do is get hit in the mouth with a ball that hits a stone. You say to yourself, nobody should ever make an error on these fields.
We're playing on velvet.
Oh, it's like playing on a carpet.
But when you grew up, were you a Mets or Yankees guy?
When I grew up, I was a Mets fan.
Okay.
Now,
So you're in Shea Stadium now, auditioning or trying out. What was going through your head? Was it nerves? Were you shaky? Was your heart racing?
In my case, I was definitely nervous. I was in awe of being in Shea Stadium. Even though, truthfully, when I was still in college, this happened like the year after I left college, I played baseball. Gil Hodges Jr. was on my college team. And after practice, we became good friends, and we would drive home and stop at Shea Stadium when they had day games and just walk into the stadium and sit and watch the end of the game. And on one occasion, it started to rain, and Gil reaches into the dugout and gets a couple of jackets from the players.
Wow.
Next thing I know, I'm wearing Yogi Berra's warm-up jacket. And he was wearing, I believe it was Bud Harrelson's.
That is crazy.
But it was such a neat moment. It was so, you say to yourself, no, this is not happening to me. And
how often did it cross your mind to steal that jacket?
The minute I took it. Unfortunately, somebody looked out and said, hey guys, before you leave, make sure you drop that off here. And since it was Gil Hodges Jr., we weren't about to abscond.
You don't want to abandon your friendship and your relationship with ever getting back into a baseball game again.
That's it. I actually got the opportunity to go over to Gil Hodges' house at one point. And it was one of the most unique experiences because he had all these memorabilia pictures put up, things that like you go like, oh my God, Johnny Padres, Don Newcomb, you name them, they were up there. And Hodges was a great player who I believe should be in the Hall of Fame. I'll just throw that out there to all of you Hall of Fame voters. And
we know you're listening.
Yeah. And if you're not, you should be.
Was there a transition between trying out for the Padres and then not having that work out to how to your expectations, and then still maintaining your fandom for baseball? Because you're obviously, there's always a baseball game on in this bar when there's a baseball game televised, always. And you're always engaged with it. And I wonder how you bypassed that bitterness part.
It wasn't easy. I was like, after those tryouts, I played, even though I wasn't signed by them, I played semi-pro for a year. So, we were getting paid like $50 a game or something like that. And
did you feel it in your heart that this might not happen?
At that point, yeah, I definitely did. I just kind of started telling myself, you unfortunately just aren't that notch above to get signed. Unfortunately, I also knew that in a lot of cases, believe it or not, there's politics involved even in that. Because I knew a lot of people, and believe it or not, I was offered, and I stupidly declined, $500 to go on down to the Padres farm system. But I had known so many guys that got the same offer and went down for a week or two, and then they send them back simply because then they sign their big bonus people. So you're just filling a roster spot. And it's hard to remember back then, but I assume I probably was better off just telling myself, you know what, it's just not going to happen.
Was it devastating?
It wasn't devastating. It was disappointing because I always thought I was good enough. Obviously, they didn't. To this day, my brother tells me, like, if you were playing today, you would be a major league player. But you know what? It wasn't in the cards. It didn't happen. Mike just fell out. I am not bitter about it.
We'll fix that. Hold on. I'll find this. Add a marker.
Oh, okay. You there? Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah, I think we're there. Yeah.
Is it back to good?
Yeah, that was my cord falling out, guys. The mic.
I'll try to cut that.
Yeah. It's not on.
With the amount. How about that?
Hello. Yeah, there we go. Okay. That was my mic falling out, guys. The cord. So we're back.
You've spent an enormous amount of time behind this bar interacting with hundreds of thousands of people. A lot of them are like the most powerful and known people in entertainment and other types of entertainment. I wonder if there were any baseball players that came in here that you were awestruck by.
Well, I don't know if I was totally awestruck by him, but there were players. Funny enough, Dale Berry Jr.
Okay.
when he was playing with Pittsburgh, and Roger McDowell when he was playing with Pittsburgh. They came in. They actually became regulars when they were in town, and then when Roger McDowell became a Dodger, then he really became a regular. He'd come in on off days and such. As far as being awestruck, I do believe that Tom Dreesen, who is one of our, favorite comics from back in the day, he brought in Mark Grace. Mark Grace was the Chicago Cubs first baseman, and it was really nice seeing him. But I will also throw out there that my favorite ball player of all times is a man named Willie Mays. He was my idol growing up. He's who I wanted to be like. He's who I practiced his basket catches and never perfected that. But
did you ever meet him?
No, I did not. I've met a few. I really haven't met a lot of baseball players. I've probably met more basketball players that have come in here. Wilt Chamberlain used to come in all the time.
Yeah,
he would sit at the bar. He would try to discreetly sneak in and just sit down. And
good idea when you're 15 feet tall.
Exactly. And if it serves me, the legend about his prowess in bed, from what I've read and been told, is not an exaggeration. That man never left here alone, ever. And let's say he would come in once every 2 weeks or what have you. Never left alone. There was actually a night or two where he came back and then left with a second woman. And
I can't fathom that kind of sex drive.
Oh, well, I get not many of us can, but I think he did.
We had athletes come into the San Diego Improv while I was down there, and it was Steve Garvey a lot and Tony Gwynn on occasion.
Oh, Tony
a lot
Gwynn.
of the Chargers would come in. They were great, but the best people that ever came in were hockey players.
Really?
They were the nicest guys, and I was always blown away.
The one that I would ask you about is Tony Gwynn.
Yeah.
I would just assume he's probably one of the nicest guys in the world.
I can't say that, but I don't know. I didn't know him. He would
Okay.
just, but I mean, Garvey would come in a lot, and he was just kind of standoffish. But he was fine.
Yeah, well, and people mistake being standoffish for being rude or what have you sometimes, and that's really not the case, because I actually, not with an athlete, I had an experience with Barbra Streisand.
Yes.
I did some looping on a movie. The Mirror Has Two Faces. And she was in the room, and she was kind of directing the looping session, which is very rare for the star director, whatever, to actually be there for that. But she
It was important to her.
Yeah, very important. This was, one of her passions, this movie. And she was asking for a certain, I don't know, let's say intonation in an airport loudspeaker system, what have you, and everybody was getting up there, doing their thing, and I was like, I wasn't being called up at that point, but like most loopers sitting there, all of a sudden you say out loud the line, and she heard it, and she said, "Let him try it." And so I got up and I tried it, and I was lucky enough to get it on the first take, because that's exactly what she wanted. Then, of course, during
2-week love affair.
Yeah, well, no, James Brolin also was there, and the feeling at the break amongst the other people there, most of them was like, "God, what a bitch,"
Yeah.
Because she didn't know what she wanted, blah blah, and my feeling was just the opposite. She's a perfectionist. She knew what she wanted.
And it's work.
Yes, and she wasn't rude to anybody. She just said what she liked or didn't like, but her perception was that she was a bitch and rude.
Yeah, well, I've had the same thing I've heard from the staff about comics. He's not a nice guy. He's not good because he doesn't hang out and drink with us afterwards. Some people come in, TCB lightning bolt, and get out of here.
That's exactly what I mean by saying, like, people mistake maybe being standoffish or stuff like that, for being rude when, maybe somebody just doesn't want to be bothered, or somebody, if you're shooting a movie or something like that. Another experience I had was shooting the movie Night Mother. I was lucky enough to get a little scene at the beginning of the movie, and the day before we shot, we went to a location to shoot stills. I played Sissy Spacek's brother, Anne Bancroft's son. When we first walked into the house to shoot the stills, I went over to Anne Bancroft and introduced myself. I said, "Miss Bancroft, my name is Eddie Burke. I'm playing your son." And she just threw out her arms. The character's name was Dawson. She went, "Dawson, I haven't seen you in so long," and blah, blah, blah. And it was just a wonderful moment. Sissy Spacek did not say anything. And, I didn't take it personally. I just, let it go, because whoever you are, you do whatever you do. Anyway, the next day we shoot the scene, and it's finished. The woman who played my wife and I are standing, I think, waiting for the tram to take us back to camp to get our cars. And Sissy Spacek comes over to us both and goes, "Guys, you were great. I really want to thank you. You were so much. Please understand that when I shoot and I'm working, I just try to stay totally in character, and I'm not trying to be rude or anything." And she did not have to do that.
Yeah.
There was
it's thoughtful.
There was no reason for her to even say that, because honestly, I just didn't think twice about that. That was just her. But the fact that she came over, a lot of other people would have misconstrued as again, she's just a bitch. She doesn't want to talk to the people that are just, not stars or what have you. But, if you really get and listen to some of these people, you'll understand that they're put upon constantly by, just
some people are just
everybody.
focused, and you also have to be a little accepting of people's accent.
Oh, definitely. People don't understand that, a celebrity, and look, when you become famous, I think part of your goal as an actor, a comedian, a musician, you want to be famous. You want people to recognize you. You want people
You want to get that
over.
love you never got as a child.
You do. But what happens is people sometimes overstep their bounds. And
I've been around it many, many, many times. I had an interesting experience with David Spade, who was here last night, like years ago. Some guy, we were in a hurry. I don't remember if we were running into Irvine, he was about to be on stage or something, and the guy went, "Hey, can I stop and get a picture? I'm your biggest fan. I love everything you've done." And Spade goes, "I can't right now." Like, we were truly seconds away from him having to be on. And the guy's like, "Well, I just want to take a quick picture." And Spade goes, "I can't do it right now." And he goes, "Dick."
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, that's just it.
And you're
people,
like, "Man, that was a turn. Biggest fan to Dick."
Yeah. Well, people do tend to be rude.
I cleaned it up, by the way. It was worse. It was more like, "You suck, you whatever," derogatory term.
I've watched people having dinner here, and celebrities, and people will just go up to them in the middle of a bite, and then they expect to be treated like nicely, when most of the time, almost every celebrity will take a picture with you if it's not in the middle of a bite or in the middle of dinner.
Yeah.
I've watched Drew Carey walk off stage when they were doing Whose Line Is It Anyway? They used to perform here every Thursday night.
For years.
Yeah.
For maybe
I think it was 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, that was crazy.
We used to have a payphone in the corner. Some woman came out. She got on the phone. She's talking to her home, where Minnesota, Michigan, whatever. Just like, frantic. "I just saw Drew Carey and blah, blah, blah. And it was like the biggest moment of my life." And who's walking by as she's saying this but Drew Carey? Drew takes the phone from her hand and has a 10-minute conversation with whoever it is that is on the other line. And
I love those stories because you really made someone's day. I mean, you inspired somebody and made them smile. And what else is the point? I mean, that's what he's doing. That's what he wants to do on stage. And he's going the extra mile. And this woman's going to tell people. Those people are going to tell people. Now he's got a little army of people that think he's the greatest guy in Minnesota.
You've really made their trip. I just have to tell this other story about Jay Leno. It was a Saturday night. I think Jay had just started doing the Tonight Show.
This isn't where he beat the customer in the alley.
No, this is an aside to that one. Jay was sitting at a table up in the restaurant with Mark Leno, and the two of them are talking about whatever, and there's a couple of guys at the bar, and the place is jammed, and they turn around and they
From out of town guys? Or?
Yeah,
Okay.
from I don't know, Michigan, wherever. They're just like, they see Jay and they're like, oh my God, it's Jay Leno. It's like, is there any way we can buy him a drink? And this, and I said, guys, number one, I'm pretty sure he doesn't drink because I haven't served him any alcohol. And number two, he's a little busy. And they were cool. They were fine. Oh, they just went on all night about everything. And when I got a minute, I went over to Jay and I said, Jay, those guys over there are just, they're like frothing at the mouth. They would just love to buy you a drink, a soda, whatever. And he said, well, please tell them no thank you. But if they would like to come over and say hello, that's fine. And of course they did. And it was like, you could just see them just, it was like the biggest thing in their lives and for that trip. And people like that are like Jay are just, they're everyman. They love their fans. They will do anything for their fans. But again, you have to know where to draw the line. You don't go up to somebody when they're eating and go like, expect them to be cordial.
Yeah, stop 1 second. Something's cutting out on my end, but I don't know if it's this. Let me see. Check. No, as long as it's going to, as long as it's being recorded. I think it's my headphones.
You there? Yeah.
Just for safety's sake, can you go back to going over and Jay? These guys would like to buy a drink.
So I go over to Jay Leno, and because these guys are just like, they're just so in awe of seeing him. And when I got the moment, I went over to Jay and I said, Jay, these two guys at the bar, they're in from Michigan or where have you. They're here for who knows what, and they would love to buy you a drink, a soda, whatever. And he said, well, just please tell them no thank you. But if they would like to come over and say hello, it's perfectly okay. And which they did. And it made their trip. It made their lives. You can be sure that they're still talking about that story today.
Yeah.
And Jay, there are plenty of stories about Jay with things like that. Same thing with Drew, Carrie.
I love those stories, and I think it's fantastic. And it's, we all... The starstruck thing is kind of a touchy thing. It's kind of creepy, but it's also joy when you get to take a person who's from out of town that never sees celebrities, and they come in here, and you get to introduce them to somebody that they've seen on television for years, and it's just fun. It's cool watching people. It would be like I think the ultimate would be like introducing a little kid to Weird Al. It's joy. It's fun. It's nice. You did something. It's again, you're making their trip.
Right. Those of us in LA, I guess, that live here for a while, you become a little jaded because you see plenty of celebrities all over because they live here. But when somebody comes in from out of town and all of a sudden they see a celebrity, like you had mentioned David Spade last night. David came up to get something from the bar, a bottle of water, and these two people are sitting there, and I swear to you, their tongues dropped. It was like, and they were tourists just visiting, and they turned around and looked at him. They never said a word because I think they were just so in awe. And people are so excited to see celebrities, and especially when all of a sudden one kind of meanders up to the bar and he's standing next to you.
Yeah.
And at this bar, it's happening. It happens all the time. We've got, besides David, Ron White sitting here half the time when he's in town, just everybody. And you will run into every comedian at some point here, including Joe Rogan, who's here quite a bit, and just the nicest person in the world.
It's impossible to even name all the people that come through here. And it kind of goes in a weird way, like kind of seasonally, too, because we saw Drew every week, maybe 3 times a week for 5 or 6 years. And now we see Rogan all the time. And when Spade needs to go out, he comes in all the time. And then Adam Sandler comes in when he needs to work out stuff. And sometimes it's a really not pleasant surprise when it's somebody we haven't seen for a while. Like when Ray Romano comes in, it's always like, oh, cool. And then, of course, Seinfeld stops in when he's in town. Chris Rock stops in. Chappelle's here often. But it's...
Whenever these guys are in town, and that's a unique thing about our club,
is
that the number one, the Improv started it all. Number 2, to me, it's the best comedy club in the world. Number 3, you know you're going to see somebody. I don't
Yeah.
care what night it is. There's going to be a celebrity here. And just like the people that you mentioned, we've got celebrities all the time. You know, Craig was in last night, Craig Robinson. He went up on stage, just walked in. He was
Yeah.
not scheduled. Again, we have that kind of atmosphere here. And we have people hanging out at the bar and going, turning around and going like, oh, isn't that the guy from Hot Tub Time Machine or whatever he's done? And people just, that's why they come in here.
I want to say that in regards to the conversation with Kevin Nealon last week, I've been working for this company for 30 years, and we have very different viewpoints. You have been behind this bar dealing with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people over 40 years, including all of these comics from every level, from starting out to superstars. And my experience has been mostly in the room while the shows are taking place. And I have 30 years here. I really thought I knew everything. I know everybody. But listening to you and Kevin Nealon talk with such exuberance, with the enthusiasm and with the humility about your first 10 years here, I really found it awe-inspiring for me. I realized I don't know everything. That was a 10-year period that I didn't was a part of, and it was an amazing time. The 70s into the 80s was really a spectacular time for the birth of modern day stand-up. I mean, you had Andy Kaufman. No one knew at the time, just like I didn't know at the time when I started out. The people I was friends with when I was a doorman at the Improv in 1988, Judd Apatow, David Spade, Adam Sandler, all these guys, I'm still going to be friends with them 30 years later. You didn't know this person's going to be this, and go on to that. Todd Glass, all these guys.
The stories that are going to be told, hopefully, on this podcast are going to shock you, not just you, because nobody knows everybody's stories.
No.
You've got, like, Kevin even said things that I wasn't aware of, and I'm sure I said things that he wasn't aware of. Now, Kevin and I go back a long way. Kevin and I have been friends for like 40 years since I started. I knew him even before I started. And so he had a little bit different of a perspective on the things than I did. But there are going to be people that are going to tell us things that nobody's ever heard before, but yet people want to tell, and people want to get it out there. People are going to be shocked at things like about Andy Kaufman, about back in the day with George Wallace and Jerry Seinfeld and Larry David and all of them, even Jeff Joseph, who used to perform here all the time but moved to New York. Everybody has their own perspective on the stories that went down. Bruce Willis, I would love to have him on, used to hang out here every single night when the TV series Moonlighting was on. He and John Goodman would to me, they were the start of karaoke. They would sing to the jukebox every single night. They would put their quarters in, or I would put the quarters in, and they would just go off all night long.
You know what this makes me think? It makes me feel that statement you hear overused, which is it's the journey, not the destination. Because there's stuff happening in this room and other rooms around the country, around the world, that are going to be these stories someday. We don't appreciate it at the time. I'm sure if you could go back, you'd be like, I'm going to enjoy this more. And the same with me, man. I had so many amazing experiences that at the time it was just another night.
Definitely. I usually use those same words to a lot of comics, especially like, open micers starting out. It's all about the process. The open mic
is about the process.
The open mic is part of the process. It's how you grow. It's where you learn, where you watch other people, where
you're building all these memories that are going to serve you later, because there is no end. There's no end in show business. It doesn't matter how successful, how financially viable. None of it matters, because it's just a place.
Right. Well, winning the seventh game in any sport playoff is as wonderful as it is. It was really all about the process of getting to that seventh game. And it's how hard you worked, all the ups and downs.
And I got to say, that letdown, that decompression after that cannot be good.
Well, it's funny. It's really kind of funny. My son did stand up for a little while, and he he was doing okay, and my son has magnificent stage presence, and they let him perform here once. They let him put on a show with a friend of his, and they did like him enough that they let him open for Ray Romano and Paul Rodriguez, if I have my names correct, if I remember correctly. And the reason they did was because his stage presence was just great. As soon as you saw him on stage, you fell in love with the kid. And the thing with when that ended, when he no longer was opening for those two on just one or two occasions, he said to me, "Well, what do I do now, Dad?" I said, "Well, what you do, if you still want to continue, is open mic and whatever, like everybody else, you know." And it was the deflation, as you said, after having that high that comedians have to go through is well, anybody. You know, when you have success in any business, the next day, now what?
Yeah.
You know, you've just won the 7th game of the NBA playoffs. You've won the Super Bowl. Okay, 2 weeks later. All right, what do I do now? Well, you start working for the next one.
Somebody, after they won either an Emmy or an Oscar or a Golden Globe, told me, I said, "What are you doing now?" "I'm just another a-hole in line at the grocery store." And I was like, wow, yeah, you're right. You're right.
I've been told the same thing by somebody. I think the actor's name was Philip Dean something or other. Anyway, he used to come in all the time, and he was a very well-known character actor. And I said the same thing to him. I said, "God, you're doing great. What are you doing right now?" And he said, "Well, right now I'm in the same boat as you. I'm looking for my next acting job."
Yeah.
And that's it. So, you know, your ups and downs in any art business is the same. You sell a painting. If you're an artist, okay, now what?
Yeah.
Well, you better start painting another one.
I know this is not a psychological podcast, but I really have learned some lessons from being around here, and some of the lessons are it is really, there is no happy point. You need to work on that on your own and just do what you do and try your best, because there is no "I've made it, now I'm content." And there's a million times I've been standing in here. I remember during Bud's book party, I looked at Jay Leno and I went, "There it is. There's the peak of what this gets you. The most amount of fame, the most amount of money. There it is, right there, and it's just another dude." And I've seen Leno a million times, but I mean, I was looking at him going, it's just another person.
I'm going to disagree with that just a little bit. I think the happy point is...
I'll edit this out.
I think the happy point is the process and working at what you have a passion for. If you truly have a passion,
I think I misspoke. I think what I was saying is a lot of times people, you know, there's a lot of anger in this room, and there's a lot of anger in comedians, and there's a lot of damage. And I think that's also us, because we were attracted to it. You know, when I first started working at the Improv, I went, "I am home. It's a bunch of screwed up people." And I was like, this is my new family.
I think that's comedy. Let's not just
I think
narrow
a lot
it down
of
to the
people,
Improv.
but in comedy, in acting and all this stuff, there is a lot of striving for what you think is going to make you happy. But when you're authentic with it, because there's comics we know that are stand-up comics, period. They're going to be doing it when they're 80. There's other people that just want a stepping stone onto a TV show or anything that will get their face on TV. And there's a vast gap between those people.
Well, there is. You've got such a big gap between those people, because I don't know, you know, as much as I've been around it and as much as I've watched so many people, I watch an unwarranted disappointment in a lot of people, in a lot of comics. You go like, "Well, why are you disappointed?" "Well, I think I sucked up there." And I like, "Look, you were up there. Did you do your best?" "Yeah." "Well, then don't be disappointed. It may not have worked tonight, but it'll work tomorrow night or the next time." So many comics have told me they will do the same set 2 days in a row. One night they'll get a standing ovation. The next night people will just look at them like, "What did you say? That wasn't funny." You have to learn how to deal with it. You've chosen a field where your response is immediate. People look at you. You're not getting reviews tomorrow in the paper if you're as an actor in a theater.
You'll know
play.
5 seconds after the joke.
You'll know during the joke. You'll find out if people even want to continue watching you. And if you're going to take all that to heart and let it affect you, which unfortunately a lot do, maybe you need to move over into something else. But it's something that every comic faces, every comic goes through, and if you're not going to deal with that part of the process, you're going to be very, very unhappy. So you just have to do that. And if you don't, then seriously, you really need to find something else.
Yeah, it's a mystery to me. Still, after all these years, it's a mystery. Why do we laugh? What is that happening inside of our body? Why does it feel so good? And how do you entice that? It's still, to me, when I go in there, I'm like, how did you figure out this code? That it's going to be, you're going to be money in the bank when you get on stage, and you're going to make an audience laugh.
That's one of the few questions I can't answer. I can make up an answer, but
it's fascinating, right?
It is.
Like, we know when we see a band what's good about it. The drums are getting me going. The bass is, I feel that bass. I feel that, I hear the melody. I hear the hook. It's making me it's inspiring things in my head. And
I would guess that part of that is you've got people up there that are doing maybe what you want to do, but you maybe don't have the nerve to do. So you're out to kind of like go like enjoy them, and I don't know. It's just a tough thing. You go out to have a good time.
Yeah.
You go out to laugh. You've had a hard day at work. It's been a long week. You know, my wife is cheating. My husband's cheating. This, that. Please make me laugh. Otherwise, I'm just going to kill myself.
That was such a stretch right there for an analogy.
but it's the truth.
I'm devastated because my family life is falling apart. I'm riddled with jealousy. I'm going to go get a few laughs.
I deal with that every night here. People just come on over and somebody's banging at the door, of course, and that's the noise that you hear.
But do you think does it ever cross your mind that we are in a business that sells laughs?
No, not like that.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah.
But it's insane when you think about what is your actual product. It's you feel happier, and it's not a drug.
That's true, because you're not walking out with anything, tangible in your hand or in your pocket or what have you. What you're walking out with is hopefully a good feeling. And if you haven't walked out with a good feeling, then, maybe we haven't done our job or unfortunately, you didn't see comics you wanted to, but you should. You need to come to a club, to the Improv, to wherever you want to go, with the attitude that you're going to have a good time.
Absolutely.
And that way you're going to leave very happy. You're going to leave enjoying what you saw, even if somebody wasn't as funny as you thought they would be, even if one of the comics wasn't as good as you thought they would be. You still had a good time.
It's truly a magical group experience. Like, in a room full of people laughing, it is really unique.
Oh, it definitely is, because you're with a bunch of strangers, and you don't know anybody. But
you're bonded by this common agreement with whatever you're hearing, and it's really a cool. I don't know, man. I wish I could encapsulate it better, but it's
hard to explain. You can't really put a finger on that, but you and everybody else around you is experiencing the same thing. And so you've got this camaraderie with people you don't know. And if hopefully everybody's laughing, it's an experience that you will remember for quite a long time. And that's what comedy, to me, does for people. It's a release. You're going for, maybe you want to call it mindless entertainment or what have you.
I disagree. It's not. It's the opposite of mindless, because this is like the last area for free speech, essentially.
Yeah, well, and that's going away too.
I know that's going away, but it'll make a comeback.
Well, you're right there, because it's a lot of comics make you think. Guys like Carlin, they made you think. Guys like Lewis Black, they make you think. People like Chappelle, they make you think. And their acts are not just simply their jokes, like their jokes about their dating or what have you. Their acts are concerning social justice.
Chris Rock.
Whatever's going on. So
Gallagher.
It could be thought-provoking, too. So they hopefully make your night, your evening, your day.
One time when I was not feeling happy with my life, so to speak, I was talking to Tom Wilson, the comedian, who I think is one of the sweetest guys on the planet. He's a great comic and an actor. And he goes, Mike, we won. He goes, we won. We're not sitting in a cubicle, miserable. We won. And I think about that all the time. Like, we have fun no matter how bad things get, no matter how weird the politics are, no matter how much we're not in a place in life we dreamt we would be. We have fun. Look at how important social interaction is to your contentment in life, and look at how much you have behind this bar. And not just with people coming in to have fun, but you get to have it with some of the brightest, most entertaining people on the planet.
That's very true, because now you make me think that that's part of the reason I left teaching. Those
kids are so dumb.
No, the kids
not entertaining at all.
No, the kids were very entertaining. That was the highlight of my day, was
I
working
bet.
with kids. That was like a really great experience. It was the administration and the the political stuff that you had to deal with that made it not worthwhile. But it was not in a cubicle, but it was sort of the same idea. Whereas then I come out here and all of a sudden I no longer have to dress a certain way. I don't have to put on a tie.
Freedom.
Stuff like that. The only time I ever put on a tie is if I have an audition and if I'm fortunate enough to get the job. But I don't.
I've seen you put on a tie to marry people.
Oh, that's true, right? I did. I totally forgot about that.
I believe we may have had a funeral or something in here, a memorial that you were wearing a tie.
Well, no, that one that's not a tie-bearing thing, but I did. I married two sets of comedians, Flip Schultz and his wife Allie, and KP Anderson.
I did not know you married KP.
Oh, yeah.
I love KP.
In fact, it was KP and Leslie, his wife, that wanted me to become ordained so that I could perform their ceremony.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun.
That's great.
It was the first time I did it, and I've only done it twice.
I've only done it twice, too.
You have?
Yeah.
Really? Who'd you marry?
My best
Anybody
friend in Vegas and another really close friend at the Madonna Inn.
Oh, that must have been fun.
That was a nervous wreck.
Yeah, well,
I mispronounced his wife's name, who I've known for years.
Well, that was like when I married KP and Leslie. It was a great experience, but it was like it was very nerve-wracking. I had never done it before.
Well, you don't want to mess it up. It's not a joke.
No.
It's not a joke.
Well, KP, being a comedian and a writer and all that,
great writer.
He actually helped me write the ceremony, and it was short, sweet, right to the point. I said, don't make me talk for more than a couple of minutes because I'm going to lose it. I'm going to be going just like you people are hearing me now. I just let's just make it short and sweet. And as my introduction of them to the audience was Mr. and Mrs. KP Anderson of Beverly Hills Adjacent, which was
great. That's perfect.
His line. It was just hilarious.
I want to ask you something. Years and years ago, I was asked to come and do a presentation for kids at like a career day about what it's like to work in a comedy club. And I drew up some stuff and talked about, what the day-to-day business is. And then I also had videos running of some of my favorite guys that I shot myself, Spade and Schneider and Sandler and a bunch of people. And I really, really was shocked that kids have such a good their sense of humor is matured by the time a boy is like 12 years old. Like, they were laughing at adult jokes and they got it. And I was like, I didn't realize that there's
well, first of all, kids are a lot smarter than we always give them
so
credit
much
for.
so much smarter.
Second of all, you have to remember all these generations now are growing up with social media. They're growing up with cable.
This was 25 years ago.
Even so, you already have cable 25 years ago. You've got kids that are growing up. Okay, it may be limited back then at 25 years ago, but now they're watching. When their parents aren't listening, they're watching comedians. They're learning jokes. They're learning how to speak earlier, all because they're now watching cable. They're watching whatever it is they're watching. So their understanding is matured, and I think they mature quicker. Unfortunately, even though they mature quicker, I'm not sure as bright as I would like them to be all the time, because I deal with so many entitled young people, but at the same time, they are more mature. They're more aware when I was their age of things.
They're considerably more aware of social issues and being more respectful of people than we were.
Yeah, and so and kids, like I said, kids are funny. Kids know a hell of a lot more than we give them credit for.
Funny.
And we just, I have this theory that if we could wipe out all the adults and just start from, let's say, a kid being 3, 4, 5 and let them take over, we might have peace in the world if we didn't
like
teach them all the rest.
Your idea for peace is wiping out all the adults as the first step.
That's exactly it. I'm sorry, but,
it would be an interesting TV show to watch.
Peace comes from war, unfortunately.
I would like to see the planet filled with 3-year-olds, and as they grow up, besides the fact that probably 80% of them would die.
Well, what was that movie where they were...
Children of the...
No.
Lord of the Rings.
These kids were stranded on an island.
Yeah. Famous book.
What was it?
One of the most famous books ever written. Of course, I can't. Lord of the Flies.
Lord of the Flies. Yeah. I mean, it would be like that. Hopefully, the violence wouldn't be there.
But it will be interesting to see who emerged as the leader.
Mm-hmm.
And if it would be a woman.
I wouldn't doubt that. Especially in this day and age when
you don't think it would revert back to caveman days? I'm stronger. I'm the leader.
No, I don't, because I think these
This is our new podcast, by the way.
Yeah.
What if 3-year-olds ruled the world? Guess what's for dinner? Candy.
Hey, it could be worse. We could be eating hamburgers, processed meat, which I do all the time. So, which is worse? Some candy or some of the other stuff we eat. But, kids are a blank slate.
Eddie, growing up in New York, was it how I imagine it from stereotypical movie scenes where you're playing stickball in the street and you're playing in a fire hydrant squirting water all over the place?
Yep, did that every day in the summertime.
Wow.
We played stickball in the street. We played stickball in the schoolyard. I would in the summertime when there was no school, I would leave my house, 8 in the morning, 9 in the morning. Wouldn't come back till 8, 9 at night because we were doing whatever. At that time, the streets and everything were a lot safer. It was a little bit different. But stickball in the summertime, we didn't have a pool to go to. Somebody would turn on a hydrant, and that would be our water when it was 100 degrees. Then some other idiot would put a trash can over the hydrant, and it would shoot.
How many times did you do that?
Oh, God. And then the fire department would have to come and figure a way to get that off and then turn off the hydrant. But that's exactly the way it was. And when I grew up in New York, the streets themselves were nowhere near, let's say, individual blocks were nowhere near as safe as the way Manhattan is now. I lived in the 90s I was born and raised on 93rd around Columbus. And you didn't walk down the street at times alone.
You were there for the heyday of the scary New York.
Oh, yeah.
Before it was so-called clean. I don't know why I said that. But before it was technically
gentrified. Before it was gentrified. Before even the area that I lived in became middle class, we were all evicted from our homes, from our apartments when I was a kid, so that they could knock these buildings down and build up what it was now. They did relocate everybody, but at the same time, we had lived in that. My parents had lived in our apartment forever, and
I would like to have.
We had to leave.
I would like to experience that early '70s New York. Not experience it as a lone dude walking around waiting to get shanked, but
that was even earlier than that.
Just graffiti and this, and the.
We listen. It was really like that. I can remember one instance where myself, my cousin, and another guy were playing stoop ball. Stoop ball is where you throw a ball against a wall, and it hits a ledge, and it bounces all over the place, and it's a game. Anyway, we're playing this in the street, and these two kids walk by, and words were exchanged by my friend and one of them, and all of a sudden my friend just hauls off and punches this kid in the mouth. And we knew who these kids were and who they were affiliated with. Well, we decided to get out of there after they ran off, and we went up on the roof, and we were watching. Within 10 minutes, there were 100 other kids there, which basically would have been our demise had we not decided to just take off. But that's the way it was.
How do you think that formed your personality?
I'm sure it has plenty to do with my personality. I'm sure it's like I'm cautious. I'm probably, people will say, hard, grumpy, whatever. And it's all part of your upbringing. But we're all part of our upbringing.
But you treasure it.
Oh, I wouldn't change it for anything. It growing up in New York City is like no other place. Maybe I've never been to Chicago or places like that, but any big city like that, especially a city like New York that's had such a varied history of being the roughest place, the greatest place, and you just, it shapes you. You become it no matter whether you want to or not. And
it's from the times I've been there, it sort of seemed like it was just everyone was just dumped there, and you had to get along.
Well, you do, but at the same time, you want to get along.
No, but that's what I mean. Everything about that city mesmerizes me. The fact that there will be 50 theaters that will empty out at the exact same time, and it is just wall to wall. Oh my God, chaos. And then 5 minutes later, it's like, where'd all these people go? Somehow everyone got on a subway or got a cab. It's just, it shouldn't work. It should not work.
But it's a melting pot.
Yeah.
And people know that this is what it is. And people know that if you want to get around or you want to survive, you have to, not follow rules, but you have to follow certain, I don't know.
It's a far cry from California where you can baby step across a crosswalk because it's your right.
Yeah, right. You have no rights crossing any walks.
I'm going to ride my
York.
bike in the lane because it's my right.
No, it's different. I started to say New York is a melting pot. I remember going into bars that were in my neighborhood. You saw every nationality, every race, and everybody was friends. Everybody grew up together. There was no the black bars are just in Harlem, the white bars are just downtown. Everybody lived in every area. And yeah, there were segregated areas, unfortunately, where just blacks live, where just whites live. But in general, people lived all over the place, and it didn't matter who you were or what color you were. You go into a bar, you weren't going into a bar with just all white people and then like 3 black guys or 3 Puerto Ricans, and you weren't going into a black bar with just 2 or 3 white guys. Same thing.
It's so crazy when you think about all the violence that took place for new immigrants that were coming over, and when the Irish were hated, then the Italians were hated, and then they just became the norm.
Streets of New York, is that the name of the movie?
Gangs of New York.
Gangs of New York, yeah. And I'm sure that was very true.
Yeah.
I didn't, even I wasn't around then, folks. But that's the way a town gets formed.
Yeah, I want to ask you again. I asked this, I'm sorry, I preface a question with I want to ask you. Years ago, I asked you, what is it about being from New York that people find so much pride in?
Well, because you grow up being what I call streetwise, street aware. You hopefully are weary of people trying to take advantage of you. You're a little bit sometimes too weary of people doing that. Sometimes you overreact or you overjudge, but at the same time, you're always looking out and thinking people are trying to rip you off. People are trying to use you.
Wrong answer, Eddie. No, I asked you one time about why are people so proud they're from New York, and you told me it's because every other place are transplants.
Oh, well, that's very true. You come out here, nobody.
But I thought that was interesting because it made sense to me because I didn't understand it before.
Mm-hmm. Well, I just think there's a pride in growing up in such a tight-knit area with millions of people, and you survive and you learn how to deal with everyone. And you come to a place like L.A., and don't get me wrong, I love L.A. too. I have no problem with L.A. You ask me to choose where I want to live, and I'd have a hard time. But L.A., 90% of the people you're going to meet here usually come from somewhere else. Everybody's a transplant. Everybody's come out here to get into entertainment, which is fine in one way or another. And whereas in New York, or most major cities, I assume, everybody's living a life.
Yes.
Everybody has a regular
Yes.
job. Everybody next to you isn't trying to be a writer, a producer, an actor, what have you. Again, not that that's wrong. It's just the way
It's
that
not wrong. It
cities
just
are.
presents a certain type of tension.
Mm-hmm. Oh, out here, yeah, because you believe
There's
that-
a lot of tension in this neighborhood because everybody here is striving to be that guy that's driving by in a Bentley.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and there is, you can sense it.
You can sense it. I watch it every night where somebody, that you go like, oh, hey, that guy's a big director, big producer, and all of a sudden somebody's
Yep.
making an idiot of themselves.
Yeah.
Like, oh, yeah, you should watch, go on YouTube and watch my thing because, next time you do a movie, you should call me.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's no hesitation in some of these
It's
people.
the oldest trick in the book in
They-
LA that someone's looking over your shoulder for someone more important to come in the room.
Oh, it's the truth.
You got to just learn to focus on, keep your eye contact with somebody and let them feel like, I mean, if you want to be that guy.
Right. It's hard because we all do it at some
Of
point.
course.
It's
Of
LA.
course.
It's what we do. It's why we came here. I'm sure I'm guilty of the same thing. I'm sure you are at some point. That we all want to be successful in what we've chosen.
I will never
We wa-
forget trying to be nice to my girlfriend, and when I saw Paul McCartney across the room, I pushed her against the wall so fast.
Oh yes, that was a great night when McCartney was here. I think he was here 2 or 3 times.
Every night was great when he was here. It's just all different too.
It's funny. All of the comedians that were going up that night were standing in the hall waiting to go up, and then of course they hear or they see McCartney, and they start looking at each other, going like, "Damn, I was going to try out all this material. Now I just saw Paul McCartney. I'm going to have to use all my A stuff."
Yeah.
And it's amazing how everybody reacts to someone of his legendary status.
Yeah, I
And-
remember standing by the bathroom and with Judd, and we were texting each other our photos. And Tara goes, "You guys are like little kids. You're like jumping up and down." And I was like, I don't care. Yeah, it was Paul McCartney. It's like my
Oh,
favorite
God.
celebrity in the world. Just
know.
came over and said, hi. And then I shook his hand. And then I'm like, that's the one guy out of the hundreds or thousands of people that were my heroes when I was a kid that I met. And it was just like not a big deal. But all of a sudden, this is the pinnacle for me.
Well, I think I've told you before, there aren't too many people that really kind of I'm in awe of,
Yeah.
celebrity-wise,
Yeah.
because I'm jaded at this point.
Yeah.
I've seen everybody. No, it's not a big deal. But him and I guess maybe Johnny Carson, the two of them.
That's a good one.
It was like when Carson actually sat at the bar one night, it was like, all right, wow. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Where does it go from here?
Yeah, this is it. I mean, who else could come in that Humphrey Bogart?
That
out of
is
his
it.
grave?
But it's also humbling. You go
Yeah.
like, this is it. This is just a person, you
Mhm.
know? I mean, this is...
Well, that's just it. They are.
Yeah.
In most cases, and they act like a person, unless they're some sort of, entitled celebrity. But in his case, that wasn't the case. And it was just like another guy ordering a drink. And not... But you're expecting him to start telling you jokes. It's like, with his, "Oh, Ed, where are you?" or something like that. And it's just one of the two people with him and McCartney that I've been in awe of
Yeah.
in all my days
Yeah.
here. And I've seen quite a few.
That's so great.
There's been
It's
everybody.
like, it's fun. It's fun, man.
Mhm.
I mean,
No.
it's so shallow and so thin, but
Mhm. Well,
having Paul McCartney, like I think the third time, walk by and shake my hand, I was like, this is cool. And then I was like, well, am I this pathetic and this much of a loser that I'm like,
No.
I'm taking validation
No.
from a stupid handshake by a guy that doesn't know me? And I was like, but that was cool that Paul McCartney just walked by and said, how you doing?
Mhm.
He didn't say
Yeah.
it with an Australian accent.
Well, I think too the fact
Wait, that was Jim Jeffries.
I think the fact that this is the Improv attracts people like him.
Yeah.
I believe I was told when he came in the first night, he was just passing by with in a car with some friends.
Yeah.
And they saw the place.
And boy, did he come in for a good show.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Rogan, Aziz Ansari, Judd
Right,
Apatow,
I can't remember who else, but it was a top-notch
Jim Jeffries.
Mhm. But it was because of the name of this club.
Yeah.
The attraction was right there to him. Even he had heard of the club. of the Improv.
Yeah.
And there it is. Hey, let's stop and see what goes on. And he came back 2 more times, to my knowledge,
Yeah.
to see other shows whenever he had a chance. And it shows you exactly how popular, how good we are.
Yeah,
When
he
we
came in
attract
on
someone
Mo
like
Better
him.
Mondays, which was an
I
which
heard
is an
about
urban
that.
night.
I was not here.
It's basically a hip hop party more than a comedy show, hosted by D-Ray. And D-Ray's hilarious, but this is more of it. There's a DJ on stage, and it's loud and it's boisterous. And he wanted to come in, and we were like, it's Mo Better Mondays tonight. It's not a regular stand-up show. It is like a kind of like a roast.
Well,
And
he's
he came in with
music.
his wife, and they had a great time. And it was fun watching these women. I would think, I wonder if they're going to know he's Paul McCartney. And they were stars, like frozen, like, oh my God, you forget that he's crosses
Every barrier,
Yeah.
every line. No, that's everybody knows who he is. It's funny too. The same thing. One day we had Bruce Springsteen. Happened.
Oh my God.
He didn't come in. But
Okay.
I believe he had gone to Fred Siegel with his wife. This is just from what I've heard. And one of the comedians, Skylar Stone, who was a big fan, just ran out. and
Skylar's a big
grabbed
fan of everybody and grabs everybody.
and just grabbed Springsteen and got a picture with him. But because he had just stopped to look at the Improv as he was walking by to his car. or
Skylar
something.
Stone has the most balls.
Oh, well.
Skylar Stone has approached RZA, who's the guitarist from the Police. He has just cold called these people and talked them into getting on stage with him in that room
Wow.
and doing interviews with them. And it's amazing
Whatever works.
the people that he gets.
Yeah.
Just sends them a letter and he goes, I'm a huge fan. I love all your work. I want to talk to you on stage. And it's been Andy Summers is the guy from the Police.
Well, those, I give guys like that credit because even though you might think at times it's like a little intrusive, at the same time, that you're giving that person sort of what they want in terms of what's called attention and
Yeah.
recognizability. And look, that's why a lot of us, period, go into acting and comedy.
Yeah.
And what we want people to recognize us. We want people to celebrate us. We want them to go like, oh, look, there's Eddie Burke.
Yeah.
Well, but not if they look at you, they'll go like, hey, there's my Carano.
Yeah, I know. What a loser. Kick that guy in the nuts. I got to say, I've done a big turnaround in the past couple of years about this because I really thought the starstruck thing was gross, and I really thought the celebrity adoration is gross. And I still kind of have that feeling. But the Paul McCartney one, I went, why am I so excited to meet this guy? And I had to do some deep search, and I went, he created things that inspired me to do things. He made me feel things. It's the same thing as when I see Les Miserables or I see something that's really special to me. It's not, I'm kissing your ass as a human being. It's you made something that moved people, that made life better, that give us a reason. Because honest to God, what is the point? Like, what is being alive? It's art, right?
Yep.
It really is art. I mean, aside from health issues, like if you don't have serious issues or you're not going through trauma or tragedy, the point of this
is to
art.
have fun and
Yes.
and be part of art.
Nothing makes you feel more alive than good art. I mean, I really don't believe it does.
I agree. I think everybody in their own way is attracted to that. Everybody, if you gave somebody a paint that was doing nothing, a paintbrush and a canvas, they would go ahead and paint something. It doesn't matter. If you gave somebody a microphone and put them on stage,
They would talk into it.
They would start talking. All of a sudden they would go like, they would be trying to tell a joke. You give somebody a playbook with and a microphone, and they'll start reading a monologue. And I think that's all of us. I think everybody in their own way wants to be famous, wants to be a celebrity, wants to go ahead and have people again recognize them. And it's I don't know what it's a product of, but I think it's just all of us. Period.
I got to also say I've condemned and chastised people for the never-ending assault of selfies and just me, 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 me. And I found it sickening. And then Sarah Silverman said, it's just people saying, hey, I exist.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, you're right. I need to accept. I need to understand that.
Yeah.
We all say that. Like, I exist.
She's right, and I think it's probably those of us that have not been brought up with this whole social media thing that probably feel that way.
Of course. I turn into old man Carano every single day.
Because we just...
speed up, slow down, jerk.
No, we just go ahead and we go like, God, can you stop taking pictures of yourself?
Yeah.
But like you said, they want a record. They want to see where they were. They want to, when they get home, they want to open their phone and go like, look, there we are, and there's so-and-so behind us, and that sort of thing.
And it works, by the way, because sometimes I peruse my phone and I go, oh, I forgot. Oh, yeah. Oh, God. It's nice.
Definitely. So do I. We all do it, and yet we all badmouth it at some point. Yeah. Of course, there are limits to everything, but we've never found any limits to anything. But it's just the way people are, and it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. The generations are different. Things have changed. The social media has changed the whole generation.
It's changing this business a lot.
Yeah.
To the point where we have to lock up people's phones now.
Oh, that's right.
Which I think is a pleasure, because there was a long period in this club where a lot of comics did not want to get on stage because they didn't want their new material on YouTube in 2 hours.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true. It's what are they, Zonder bags or something?
I don't know.
Like that?
It's magical in there, though. I mean, it's a world of difference having where 30 people aren't videotaping the show.
It also saves our door guys a lot of hassles with turn off
Plus,
your phone.
you as an audience member get to sit in there. I sat in that little teeny 40-seat room and watched Chris Rock do an hour of new material with Dave Chappelle opening for 30 minutes with 15 other people, and that's a treat. Yeah. You don't realize that this is an exceptional night. This is a good one. You get to see things. This is something 10 years from now. You're going to go, oh, I remember watching that special before it was a special.
It makes you, like you said, you put away your phone. It makes you pay attention to what you're doing. Yeah. And that's something, unfortunately, that doesn't go on all the time anymore. But the fact that we take those phones and put them in these bags, if you're here for comedy, now you have to pay attention to the comedy and, have a good time. You don't have to text your friend that, do you want to have breakfast tomorrow? Or, some inane little fact. In
my experience, going to a show and not having a record of it on your phone is a better memory than looking at the video going, it wasn't as good as I remember.
That's probably true, because that means you watched it or you paid attention to what was going on. That way you go like, you remember when this, instead of like, look at this picture. Well, what were they doing then? Well, I don't know. I was taking pictures. Well, now you don't have to worry about that, because now you can tell them this is what was going on because I wasn't doing pictures.
Do you have any kind of regrets that you didn't have a camera with you throughout your entire career?
God, yes. I really do. I wish I was that person that wanted to take pictures of everyone that came in.
And it was easier back then when everyone didn't have a camera.
Yeah.
People were more than happy to pose for a picture.
It was no problem. It really wasn't. There are a few people that got camera shy. I remember, Sam Shepard was in here one night, and it was really crowded. And there were some women taking pictures, not of him. Just, I guess it was sort of aimed in his direction because the people they were shooting were in front of him. And he said to me, like, don't let them take my picture. I don't want them to take my picture. And I go, Sam, they're not taking your picture. They're just shooting each other, and I'll make sure that they don't. But it's I wish I would have had my own camera to do all that from the day I started, because I would have, God, I would have had tons and tons of pictures.
I think about that. When I first started...
You have a lot of pictures. Well, you're a great photographer.
I took photos here for 18 years, but the previous years, I never took photos. And my first 7 years at the Improv, I saw everybody, and I rarely took out a camera. Mm-hmm. And I just go, I could have photographed everybody in the beginning. All these guys, I could have had 7 years worth of photos.
Who's the most satisfying person whose picture you've taken? Like, who was like, the most cooperative? Just take your time, do whatever.
Steve-O.
Really?
Yeah, always.
Wow.
Always. Mm. We've done like headshot photo shoots and stuff like that, and live stuff.
Who were some of the first people you shot?
Very first person I shot. Well, I took pictures when I was the manager of the Improv in San Diego from like 1989 till like 1994. I took pictures like one or two now and then for weird special shows that I booked. Tiny Tim, Ray Manzarek, Jim Carroll. I go,
yeah.
oh, I'm bringing a camera tonight. And I took like one picture of Tiny Tim on stage, one picture of Jim Carroll and Eddie Vedder, one picture of whomever. But I remember vividly, we opened the Irvine Improv in 2000, the new Irvine Improv that's now the old Irvine Improv. And a week into it, Ray Romano and Kevin James came down, and one of the CEOs of the company, or CFO, Tony Baldino, said, "Do you have a camera?" And I went, "Yeah, I'll find it." And I brought it in and photographed Ray Romano. Those pictures are terrible.
Yeah.
But I had no idea what I was doing. But that was the first
right.
person I took pictures of on stage at the Improv when I was actually trying to do it. And then I just became enamored with it.
Well, and you've done a great job. All the pictures
you.
up here have been taken by you. And
Thank you.
over the years, they've all been up. And every comic I know that comes in, like, where's my picture? How come my picture to you? How come my picture isn't up there? And it's like, well, I have it somewhere, but I'll get it up as soon as I can. It's not that we don't have any more wall space or anything like that. But
We're lazy.
Yeah. But I actually took a picture, believe it or not, of the Chambers brothers.
Yeah, I did too, actually.
Yeah, I don't think many people know that this club was a music coffee club called the Ash Grove before it became the Improv.
Yep.
And they had apparently a ton of very popular music artists. Jackson Brown, I believe.
Crosby, Stills, Nash played here.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and the Chambers
The
brothers.
Rolling Stones were known to hang out in that club.
Yeah. And this was a big club. I believe they're doing a documentary now about the Ash Grove from way back when. But this was a big music club, and then I guess it closed, and that's when Bud swooped in and made it the Improv. So that's where we're all going to head. And with the people that we interview, the people will be telling us their stories and so on. And hopefully you'll be learning things that you've never heard of, like about the Ash Grove, and probably things that Mike has said that I've never heard, and vice versa. And hopefully you'll all be interested, because it's going to be fun. We're going to have people on here telling you stories that I've never heard, and people that you've never heard of that probably are going to have some of the more interesting stories to tell. So until next time, we will see you when we see you. Take care.
Thank you, Eddie.